All right, I think we are up and running. Welcome, everybody. Nate Haregrove with OnForm, and I've got an exciting interview coming up. We've got our founder, one of our founders, Gear Fisher, has joined us, and then we've got the founder of Sqairz, Bob Winskowicz. He is with us, and we are super excited about this conversation. We just met Bob for the first time a couple of weeks ago at the PGA show, and it was one of those, like, you almost say, like, just an instant match, a love at first sight kind of a thing. When we got to understand a little bit about his company and learned a little bit more about what we offer with OnForm, it was an instant conversation, and we wanted to connect with Bob and Gear. Most of you know Bob, and one quote that I grabbed and I just thought, man, is this so cool? The way that he views golf and the way that he views the golf shoe is as important as the club I swing. And the way I describe to my wife is I need the most important golf club. I am looking for the most important thing. And I've never really thought about my footwear that way. And when I saw that quote, I thought, man, we got to get Bob on the chat and have a conversation. So what do they say? Without further ado, I'd really love to bring in Bob and Gear, and let's get this conversation going. So let's start with Bob. Bob, if you don't mind, give us a quick rundown. We were talking a few minutes ago. Give us a quick rundown of who you are, how you got into the industry. Take us back to McGregor and Arnold Palmer and all of that stuff real quick.
Yeah, so I got in the industry back in the 1993, I believe it was, with McGregor Golf, and I ran the sales and marketing for the eastern half of the United States, and then I took a job as the executive VP of sales and marketing for Arnold Palmer about 3.5 years later. And that was quite a nice job, getting to interact with the king and working with him. So I worked at Palmer for 3.5 years as well, and they kind of got out of the business. But what happened was in 2009, when I saw the launch of the Echo shoe, those lightweight sneaker-like shoes, I had a depth of understanding of ground force, and where the swing speed emanates from is your connection to the ground. That you create swing speed. The club doesn't create swing speed. The ball doesn't create swing speed. They're recipients of swing speed. You create that through your interaction with pressure in the ground. So I looked at that, and I had bought a pair of those lightweight sneaker shoes, and I just felt like my foot was moving in the shoe and I was losing performance characteristics in my swing. And I said, geez, it's got to be the shoe. That's the only thing that really changed. And so, there's a lot of technologies out to map pressure and to see the results now of comparing one shoe versus another. So, we've gone down that path and using software and how important software is now in the game of golf to analyze all the components of the swing and weight distribution. So we took all that learning, all that knowledge, and deployed it into a golf shoe.
Which I love. The way that you just defined wearing that Echo shoe, I promise you I have it in my locker right now. I've got every golf shoe imaginable. I was talking with one of your reps at the PGA show about stability, and he was describing to me, you're on a side hill lie. I'm like, say no more. My foot literally slides in my shoe, and it's just a swing and a prayer sometimes with that for me. So we're going to get into that. And I'm super, super excited to dig a little bit more into it. We got Gear online, which is honestly, it's a lot of fun to have one of the founders of the company being able to join us and tell us a little bit, Gear, about yourself, maybe a little bit about your past, and then just how OnForm came to be, and then we'll kind of get in a little bit deeper on the conversation between us and Sqairz.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Nate. We started OnForm just a couple of years ago. I've always been fascinated by video, and you don't have to explain to somebody how video can help learn a technique and develop individual skill. Like, people get it, let me see what's happening, and I'll see if I can move my elbow here, whatever. And when you put video in the hands of a coach, it becomes a tool. So I always wanted to help coaches be able to express their knowledge to help others, improve. And my background is in endurance sports like triathlon and cycling and such, where I built a software platform, of my last couple decades. but started OnForm a few years ago with Krishna Ramachandran, who's I explain as he'll forget more about video than any of us will ever know. And we put our heads together and said, we should take video to a new level and build a platform that is easy to use and fast, and then takes advantage of all this cool computer vision stuff. And you've seen AI and all these things are coming down the pike. And Krishna and I both just were like, it's not being used by any of the entities out there today. So we started building OnForm and released it a couple of years ago, and now it's really catching on, getting a ton of traction in golf. And we're fortunate here, seeing everybody from golf to baseball, et cetera. And I've always played golf all my life, so that's kind of my personal passion. And I also have a size 10.5, like quadruple D fat foot. So that is the perfect marriage here, because when I tried Sqairz shoes, I'd seen the Nick Faldo commercials and stuff, but then I tried them on and I was like, game over. So
it was awesome.
It's perfect here.
It was awesome. Bob, you should have been there. Who was the guy upstairs? Was his name John? I don't want to
It was John Bacon, who's our director of design. Yes. Yep.
Nate is 5'8", 175 pounds. And I walked in and I saw John. I was like, you're going to tell me what kind of shoes I need. But Gear and I put those on and walked around, and it was oohing and on and moaning. And I'm like, goodness gracious, there's something about this. Which leads me to my first question. Gear mentioned something about technology, and that's kind of been his space. You mentioned something about technology and how it's gone into the shoe itself. Tell me, how did we come from, I did a little history on you and watched a few interviews. How did we come from Hogan and his 14 spikes in each foot, 28 total, to 4 red cleats and the pressure points in the golf swing?
Yeah. So one of the areas that we focused on early on was the amount of pressure you exchange with the ground. And really the conversation you need to have before you talk about your ability to create the pressure is to efficiently create it, which is all about balance and stability. And like Nick Faldo says, is you can't find balance during the swing. You've got to start out balanced. And that means, where's your weight distribution, front, back, and left and right? So how much pressure is on your left foot versus your right at a neutral position, and back and forth as well. So you need to be balanced. And with our shoe, as you can see, it's got a square toe shoe. And with the square toe, that allows your toes to sit naturally in the shoe. And unlike all other shoes, your toes will feel the bottom of the shoe in the sense that you'll feel more balanced, more stable. Yet with a rounded toe shoe, you're angling your toes to the center of the shoe. And ultimately what that does is it puts a little stress on your ankle. And very similar to your hand, if I was to angle my fingers and then try to move my wrist up and down, you'll feel the pressure. So now, because your toes can sit naturally, we were able to widen the base under the ball of the foot wider than any other golf shoe. So that inherently is going to provide you even more balance and stability. But if you can widen the base here, widen it here, it looks symmetrical. The total surface area contact with the ground is far greater than any other shoe. So that means you've got greater ground coverage. So that means a more efficient energy exchange. Now, when you compare the cleat positioning, the reason for the red ones is this is where the greatest amount of pressure is exerted on the bottom of the feet throughout the swing. So because we're able to widen the base, more surface contact, we can place these cleats strategically under the areas where the greatest amount of pressure is generated. So therefore you need greater connection with the ground there. And to your point about Ben Hogan, nobody really knew about that. Nobody knew about that for about 3 years. He had an extra cleat placed in the ball of his right foot. And I don't think he got too many things wrong. So no. He understood ground connection, ground force. And back in the day, they don't have the OnForm technology. They don't have pressure map. They don't have the resource. They didn't have the resources to do the analysis. They just knew. They knew, But now you can have this video analysis that shows you all the data. So when we say, hey, try on this shoe versus ours, hey, you know what? The proof is in the pudding. It's right there, and you guys present those type of those facts.
It's interesting that you said that the proof is in the pudding, because the pudding that you went through, if we're going to run with that analogy, to create this shoe. I was listening that you went to Golf Lab out in San Diego, or you flew them out to your facility. I looked at some of the numbers, and in the increase, you tested against the FootJoys and Echoes of this world, the Adidas, and what I found was the most interesting was I think you said, is it 5 millimeters you were able to gain and increase width, I believe,
Correct.
of the stability of the shoe. It's almost like, I think someone said, like kind of just standing in a flip flop or a sandal where your feet are open. And I went, well, yeah, that does make sense, because I'm a runner. I shouldn't say that. My wife will disagree. I like to run because I need to. But when I went to the running store, I don't just go to like a Dick's Sporting Goods, grab a pair of shoes and get out the door. I went and got fit, and they went through so much of the foot. You're standing on pressure, and I'm going, why are runners spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on it's the only thing that touches the ground.
Right. It is, and it's the same with golf. I mean, it's people find it hard to believe by simply changing your shoe, you can improve your game. And yet with the science today, we can prove that. And to your point, if you think about it, there are two connections in the game of golf: your hands to the club and your feet to the ground. And if you ever wonder about how important your feet to the ground is, sit on a swivel chair, pick your feet up, and try to hit a golf ball.
Right.
Because that will tell you that look, it is all about the science. And when you get into it about, not so deep, but Newton's third law and the pressure you generate. And not only is it the pressure you generate, is your ability to use that pressure. And if you're not using that pressure, so think of the golf swing as like snapping a towel. So you get the pressure back to your right side if you're a right-handed golfer. You get it back to your right side, and then it's how quickly you can get it to your lead side. And that's really that's really where distance comes from. And the reason why a lot of people don't get to utilize that is because of postural control. And so the difference between you using the pressure and creating it could be postural control. It could be inefficient movements. And I think that's where technology is today, that they can show you and pinpoint those inefficiencies in your postural control. And that's what helps you utilize your ability to use that pressure that you create, which is a function of your connection to the ground.
Man, that's a better segue. I couldn't have asked for a better segue as far as postural control, because the app that Gear and Krishna have developed and are continuing to develop, I think answers some of that, where OnForm isn't necessarily going to be the app that tells you exact angle of this is what you're doing wrong. It's going to be the second set of eyes, the visualization for the coach to say, hey, you can see here. And then we have partnered with, and Gear, I'd love for you to chime in and maybe show us a little bit. We've partnered with the company called Body Track, which is the pressure mat. And that's going to be able to show us the pressure on the trail side to the lead side. You were just saying, Bob, of getting from that trail side, how quickly we get to the lead side. And if I start to go down what Terry used to say about linear tracing and all of that type, I get lost. I know my golf swing and I swim in my lane, but I think this video shows, and Gear, I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about just how OnForm is listening to where the golf swing starts. OnForm is listening, going, hey, it starts from the ground up, right? This is where it starts. So how can we as consumers and coaches take some of this visualization that OnForm has done?
It's exactly what we do. So, I mean, obviously everything that we do in the platform is around video to start with. Like, we wanted this platform so a coach and an athlete could have a conversation about their technique around a video. And with golf, we got the platform, to where it is. It's very complete with sharing and analyzing and drawing lines and stuff. And we said, what's the most important next step? And it is ground force. So we went to Body Track and asked to integrate with the Body Track pressure mat, because we want to tell the whole story in the video, right? Again, as a tool for a coach, the technique, the motion, et cetera, of your body is critical, but you can't see everything that's happening with the ground, and the ground is where the whole thing starts. So that was why we prioritized integrating with body track. And so this happens to be a video from Justin James. Terry Hashimoto from Body Track had recorded the other day. And you can see here, I can just kind of spin it back and forth, but you can see he's standing on the body track, and we've got our skeleton visualization turned on there. And as he takes a swing with 200 some mile an hour force, that center of pressure travels back and then accelerates super fast forward. So we now have that built in, so you can check, when your club's parallel on the back swing, top of swing impact, where your pressure forces are. And we continue to develop the integration. So we'll be adding all the ground force, direct readouts, and basically making it, again, a tool for coaches so that they can better communicate their knowledge to the student and improve, the outcome of a swing.
Bob, I'd love to hear your feedback on this. When you see something like this, you see that we're listening to the pressure, and we're now adding some of this skeletal tracking on there. What are some of your thoughts on that?
See, I'm a big fan of this type of technology, and I always have been, and watched it evolve over the last several years. And it's very difficult for a golfer to consider sometimes what the coach is saying, and it's better to visualize it. So when you have a technology like this where they can stop it in frame and say, look at this right here. You were here, or you were here, or your weight was here at this particular point. And it becomes more real. It's something that I think golfers now can kind of personify, so to speak, or to digest, and say, now I can see it. I can hear what you're saying, but now if I can see it, it makes more sense. And I think too that a lot of the good coaches today in the video analysis will share that video with them afterwards, and you can take it home and look at it, and you can remember how and where you were at a particular point in time and say, you know what, now I get it. Now I get it. So it's bringing those two things together to make it easier for the instructor to teach and for you to digest it.
That's awesome. I mean, that is, like Gear said, that's exactly what OnForm is trying to do we're a coach's first mentality. I've heard Gear say that over and over. We, at the PGA show, we had people consumers come up and ask us, and we are definitely a coach's first approach. We want to keep the coach in mind. And then, because we know the way that the coach is going to find success is building that list of players, the list of students, and that two-way communication with them. I by no means am a golf coach. I'm a high school volunteer dad who likes to golf. Yeah. But I had my kids over the other day hitting balls, and I'm like, hey man, it's this wall drill. Don't hit the wall. And they're like, okay. And then I put them on video. I drew a line behind them, and they went, oh, that's what you mean. And what you just said, Bob, was visualization to reality. Yep. And that was a game changer for them, seeing their feet, how much they're dancing on the mat, just for high school kids, 15 to 16-year-olds, right? It's unreal.
Yeah, and I think it's important. So for an instructor, if you're an instructor, your success is measured by the student's success. If he's getting better or she's getting better, their reputation builds because you're out there saying, geez, I went to so-and-so and, I was on this video and this is what I saw, this is what I've done, and check this out, and that's how an instructor gets a better following and gets more business is creating success for the golfers. But, like I was saying before, this is the next evolution in golf and trying to help people play better golf is this video analysis, the pressure mapping, because weight distribution and how you generate it, where your feet are at a certain point. If you don't get that right, everything else is a guess. Everything else is suspect, and you'll never put it all together unless you get your feet right and you get the right balance and stability. And, there's companies out there, there's a lot of, I'm sure, golf footwear companies out there that really don't want to talk like this, that don't want to share this kind of data because, quite frankly, they don't have a lot of this data.
Well, you made a comment on one of them. It was you're competing against sneaker companies, right? These companies, and I don't think there's anything wrong with competition like that, but it's we're going against those who are running first almost, and then it's a basketball shoe, and then it's a, fill in the blank. I think you also made a comment about one of your interviews was about soccer shoes, and I'm a former soccer player, and I understand that more than anything. The footwear that I was wearing was everything. If it was too soft, that's why I'm an old school Adidas Copa Mundial, like old school leather, kangaroo leather, good bottom soles. Like that was me. And what you made the comment was you're understanding what's going on from the ground up, and you're comparing it to a running shoe company.
Right. And if you're a 200-pound guy, and you're creating, say the pros can create, say 1.5 times their body weight. If you see a lot of these good players, they'll get back, and when they get back to the top, they kind of sit down. And what they're doing is they're forcing the pressure into the ground. As they hit the ball, that seems like they're up on their toes. That's because the pressure they generate is lifting them up. And so that's how they generate. Now, if that shoe is a sneaker-like shoe that doesn't have structure to it, it's so much wasted energy, so much. And in soccer, when you make those cuts, you need a material that will hold your foot in place. And it's the same exact thing in a golf swing, that you need that material and that structure of a shoe to keep that energy right there so that you can use it and transfer it into your swing.
So I'm new to the whole how much pressure is generated for these swings. You mentioned one, like a Justin James or some of these long drive guys. Do you have any numbers, and I genuinely don't know, any numbers on how much force they're pressing or using from the ground that they're accelerating with?
We do. I would do this from memory, and I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm gonna avoid the question. But we have all of that data, and we've tested. Here's the best thing about it is that we've tested with Terry Hashimoto, who you referenced earlier. And in fact, we asked Terry, and he did a study for us. And I think to date, he would tell you he's tested probably over 500, but to be safe, I'm going to say 400 golfers, literally, about how much pressure they can create in their shoe, and then how much pressure they can create in the Sqairz. And we're seeing on average of about 3,000 Newton increase in pressure, and they measure the pressure in newtons. So we were seeing those kind of numbers, but it varies from everybody and how much pressure. But again, it's not only how much pressure you can create, it's how effectively do you use it. And that's always the key in the golf swing.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, Gear, I saw that I think you and I need to take to heart was with the shoe and the testing they had, on average, 2.2 mile swing speed increase, 4.8 mile ball speed, and 8.8 yards distance. I think you and I could use that after the last time we played.
Yeah, like you said, I was just focused on getting the ball in the air, but no.
Correct.
Under pressure, and people watching, but by myself, I'm a driving range pro. I'm not sure if you knew that. No. Well, no. Hey, Bob, I'm curious, what's next for Sqairz? I'm a fairly new convert, so I'd love to just give you a chance. Where are you taking it?
Yeah, in golf, we're looking at several new features in the shoe that will allow you to generate more pressure. There's still, the way the foot moves in the swing, there's still areas of the shoe that need to be reinforced. And there's a combination of putting this reinforcement in and maintaining comfort, looking styling. And so there's a challenge there. And I think we've figured that out. So that's next in golf. We're launching into the pickleball world. We just launched a pickleball shoe simply because we know that the game is played a lot on the forefoot. And you're always kind of leaning forward, and you're very concerned about the line in front of you. And so, you're always on your toes. So with our shoe, your toes sit naturally, gives you a better platform. And also, you mentioned earlier with your technology, you mentioned baseball, and we've had a lot of interest of a baseball shoe. So where, in fact, our director of design spent about 15 years in the cleated business. He worked for Reebok, New Balance, and Puma in the cleated world. So he understands baseball, understands the cleated world. So we're looking at doing something in baseball as well.
Cool. Yeah, it makes total sense. That's our number 2 market, from the software side. So obviously there's a lot of components that are similar, and yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Super cool.
Man, you mentioned pickleball. I just listened to the golf.com podcast with Hank Haney and how big he is into pickleball. I was like, hold on a second. This guy is like,
he's a fanatic.
Pickleball. Him and Kuchar are playing. Like sounds like there's a thing on tour where it's a pretty big deal.
It's amazing. I even at my home club, I watched them rip up the tennis courts and put in pickleball courts. It seems like it's, I jokingly say it's like chocolate and peanut butter, pickleball and golf, it's,
That's it.
It's coming together.
Low impact, but great. Hey, let's wrap up with one question. Unless you have anything else, Gear.
Oh, just going to chime in. I played pickleball for the first time last week, so I get it now. I get it now. Staying out of the kitchen and all that whole deal. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
It's an easy but complex game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can't run into the kitchen until the ball falls, all that.
Oh, my gosh.
I wanted to wrap up with one question. We've been talking a little bit about ground force and technology and advancements in the game. But what is one thing that you, both Gear and yourself, Bob, let's start with you, Bob. What is one thing you would change about the game of golf?
The one thing that I would change about the game. See, I'm torn between having some fun and technical. So I would say I would increase the amount of clubs somebody could use by at least 2 more clubs. That would be my first thing. But I'd like to see more 16th holes out there at the Waste Management. I'd like to see the 16th hole and a lot more tournaments. That would be the number 1 thing I think I'd change in golf right now.
Would that be cool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe Joel Damon and Harry Higgs going shirtless on 16.
Well, maybe not Harry Higgs, but I mean, no offense to Harry, but
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Gear, what is one thing you would change about the game?
Oh, man. I like Bob's answer. I guess I would be with Phil, and we should have whatever the hell length of club you want on a driver, and let you play more with shafts and other stuff. And I think when these sports, the governing bodies regulate technology so much, how do you decide for just playing with everybody plays with the exact same club? Like, remember the IROC race series ages ago, and they tried to have the exact same car, and it's stupid. And I just think people ought to push the boundaries in technology, push the boundaries if it's at your feet, if it's in the club, if it's in your brain, if it's on your shirt. Let people push the boundaries and see how good a human can get. I mean, granted, we can't go, all the way to doping, but yeah, I'd like to see a few less rules rather than more rules.
Man, I love that. And I thought about this, so I had an unfair advantage. If there's one rule or thing I would change, it's don't make me hit out of a divot in the fairway. I just can't stand that. When I hit a ball in the fairway and it's the 1 out of 18 that I actually hit the fairway and it finds that little divot, I'm like, oh, so that would be my one rule change if I could.
I agree with you there too.
Listen, Bob, Gear, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate your time. I appreciate learning a little bit more about Sqairz, learning a little bit more about OnForm and how the two are working together from a video analysis piece to the pressure mapping and ground force. And we're looking forward to meeting up again and doing some more stuff in the future. So everyone look forward to that. We're excited that we're here. We're excited that we're kind of getting back to normal, if you will, a little bit and getting out and playing a bunch of golf. So again, thanks so much for your time, guys. We really do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Nate.
Thanks,
Nate.